And now I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon. And as you know, we've been focusing on an area that many of our delegates and members have told us that the profession needs to work on, which is leadership. We've already heard quite a bit about this today. In our strategic plan, the SMA has devoted a pillar to advancing physician leadership. Under that, we have set goals to enhance physician leadership skills through our Physician Management Institute courses and by achieving Canadian Certified Physician Executive certification. And although we have met our number goals for these objectives, we are still hearing that there are gaps and more needs to be done. Not only does the SMA have to do more to enhance physician leadership skills, but more physicians have to realize how important it is to refine and expand their skills and seek leadership training. Our speaker today will relate the importance of expanding your leadership skills. As a physician, you are a leader, be that in your practice, in your community, or in organizations like the SMA. Dr. Joshua Tepper is a family physician and currently the Vice President of Education at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre in Toronto. He's responsible for educational strategy and programming for learners, physicians and staff, patients and their families, and the community. Dr. Tepper spent over 5 years as the Assistant Deputy Minister at the Ontario Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. There he led the Health Force Ontario Health Human Resources Strategy. Dr. Tepper was a Senior Medical Officer for Health Canada, an Adjunct Scientist at the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences, and a Research Consultant for the Canadian Institute of Health Information. He has a bachelor's degree in public policy from Duke University, a master's in public health from Harvard, and he completed an executive MBA in June 2011 at the Richard Ivey School of Business at Western University. So I think Dr. Tepper is very well qualified to speak to us on leadership this afternoon, and I'd like you to join me in welcoming Dr. Tepper.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for the introduction. This is a huge honor. And just before I get started, I want to say a couple things up front. First of all, I'll break the computer. I'm not here on anybody's behalf. I don't think my boss knows I'm here, so email him. Everybody here knows Barry. Certainly not here on behalf of the Ontario government or anything. Just here's myself. A couple other quick things off the top. I'm not from Saskatchewan. I haven't practiced here, and so I don't have a lot of nuance or knowledge, and so a lot of my examples are not from Saskatchewan, because I try not to talk about what I don't know. But I still think most of it will be quite applicable. I know there's non-physicians and CEOs in the room, but this is a little bit focused on physicians and physician leadership, because that's what I was told to do, so I'm pretty obedient on that, and I think that was the theme of the day. But again, I think the theme should be broadly applicable. And the other thing is, I think there's sort of a panel maybe later. I chose not to make this very personal about my experiences today, and I'm president of the Canadian Federation of Medical Students, the Residency Association, vice president of the Society of Rural Physicians, and on the CMA board and the OMA board, and of course 5-6 years in the ministry as an ADM. But I actually want to talk today at a slightly higher level. And I must say there's two things I was told when I joined the ministry. One was your name should never be in the paper, and never speak after the minister. So I was moderately successful on one when I was in the ministry and failing on the second one now. So we are all physicians, and of course, the first thing we do in any patient interaction is we do vital signs. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get you all to stand up, we're going to do a temperature check. Because I've got 3 questions for you. We're going to do a temperature check in the room. Because as the minister was speaking, I was getting very different sort of senses. I was hearing some things, not sure it was resonating. And as we think this through, it'd be good to sort of do a temperature check. So I'm going to offer 3 statements. And if you agree with them, raise your arms right up in the air. If you disagree, just keep them down by your side. And if you're not sure, you can see where this is going, keep them in the middle. Mainly, to be honest, I just saw the number of Nanaimo bars and brownies, and I figured if I didn't get you up and standing now, you'd all be asleep in about a minute. So the first statement is, do you agree that physician leadership is absolutely crucial to any change or successful change in the healthcare system. Agree? Disagree? We heard a lot today about engagement. Do you agree or disagree that the province has done enough to engage and participate and engage physician leaders? Now, I want to talk about the gap between the first and the second responses. That's what a lot of I want to talk about today. And the third is, heard a word a lot from the minister today, and I must have written it 8 times a day when I was in ADM and I was speech writing and stuff, or writing press releases. Heard a lot today about transformation. So do you agree or disagree? So again, raise your hands. The transformation is just another word for more of what we've had before. It's just, it is the jargon of the day. Mix. And some people are sort of saying, actually, there's something going on. So the topic, as you saw in the front, and you can sit down now, sleep, whatever, is beyond disruption. So when you hear the word disruption, you probably think about a couple things. You think about physician disruption, and I'm not a regulator, so I'm not going to be talking about physician disruption. But you often think about this guy, Clayton Christensen, who wrote a book called, and talks a lot about, Disruptive Innovation. And so disruptive innovation is a concept in which he's an MBA business guy out of Harvard, and he talks a lot about disruptive innovation as things that really change the marketplace. And he thinks about this and he articulates this in happening in 2 different ways. The first is in which basically somebody's doing something really well right now in a super way, providing a high-end service, and then somebody else comes in behind them, offers something perhaps not quite as fancy, a little bit more, a little bit less efficient, a little bit less expensive, less of a sort of Cadillac version of it, but comes in, finds and scoops that low end of the market. And as they scoop the low end of the market, they're able to just keep taking more and more of the market share. The other thing that happens is somebody comes up with an innovation, often a technology, that actually takes a piece of the market that nobody had even identified before. And then, of course, what he also talks about is sometimes somebody comes in on the low end of the market, not only captures that market, but just sweeps right through. So let's talk a little bit about this in the non-health sector, some of the things that happen. So new markets. If you think back to the portable transistor radio, this was now being able to take news, music, whatever, on the go. Nothing had happened before. There was no place before that there was a technology that allowed you to sort of carry music, knowledge, news with you as you move forward. And then once that came out, yes, sustainable innovation happened. You got the Walkman. After the Walkman, you got the MP3. After the MP3, you got the iPods, et cetera, et cetera. But the first new market that really opened up was the ability to move forward with the new technology to actually take news right out. Then you have a bunch of examples of low end of the market, where somebody came in with something that was brand new, not really brand new, but something that had in an area and innovated in a way that did something different. And his classic paper on this is actually about floppy disks. And so first there was 14-inch drives, and then they went down to 8-inch drives. Those quickly turned into 5.5-inch, and then the 5.25-inch floppies, and then down to the 3.5-inch. And very quickly what was happening was that somebody was coming in with a product that was perhaps a little less flexible, didn't have all the capacity of its predecessors, or all the flexibility, but it could go in on the low end, and then what happened is it just dominated that market and pushed the existing technology out. You could think about cars from Japan coming in. They offered, it wasn't as fancy as the Cadillac, it wasn't as fancy as the big American-made cars with the V8 engines, not as big, not as luxurious, didn't have that upper end, but they came in with a different product that appealed to people, met a need, and then very quickly built on that success and moved through. And then there's an example of something that, again, took over the whole market, which is mini computers. Personal computers, actually specifically, came in, and they, first of all, the big companies didn't worry about them, because they said, oh, who needs a few of these, fine, people have them in their home, these personal computers, not a big deal. Let them have that market share. And sure enough, bit by bit, and now the number of people who have supercomputers, right, there's just a few of them in the world now, and basically everybody's and now we can talk about tablets and stuff, but really the personal computers absolutely took over that market. So what happens in healthcare? So first of all, new markets emerge all the time in healthcare. We have disruptive innovation in healthcare all the time. SSRIs move from depression to anxiety. Medication for erectile dysfunction comes in, opens up an entire new market. Studies come out and show lipid-lowering agent for primary prevention of cardiac disease. New markets constantly opening up. What about the low end of the market? So telemedicine. Telemedicine changes how we think about not delivering all care, but selected aspects of the care can now be delivered in new and different ways. You can't do all of your care, not all of your practice is going to be delivered remotely, but there's suddenly, through technology, an opportunity to take a component of what you're doing, selected patients, and through those selected patients, change the delivery of care for those patients. And new roles. You think about pharmacy technicians, physiotherapy assistants, nurse practitioners. They're not going to be able to offer the full scope of practice of a pharmacist or a physiotherapist, but they're able to provide a component of that role. They're able to provide a range of services, and I don't want to use the word low end in this case because it's not a matter of lesser quality, but a range of services less than the complete of what a pharmacist can do, but it creates new tensions and new opportunities and new tensions in the market. And then of course there's things that just really change the market. So minimally invasive surgery. So when minimally invasive surgery came in, it disrupted things, but remember, I remember back to when we carefully selected the patients, or interventional cardiology. We were pretty careful in which patients were selected. There's a high conversion rate. Some patients weren't even considered for minimally invasive surgery. Now it's basically, that's what you do. The number of open cases for gallbladders, colons, splenectomy, much more limited. Minimally invasive surgery has been a disruptive innovation that has really changed the way we deliver care. But those are all things that have happened. We all know about them. You're like, yeah, that's 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 12 years ago. Let's take a look at where things are going. Let's talk about the disruptive innovations that are going to hit our system and are hitting our system right now. So right here, this is, and again, you do what you know. I think there's supposed to be a laser printer, but in the bottom side, this guy with the headset, this is off CTV newsreel of a patient at Sunnybrook. And he's got a benign essential tremor. He's had it for most of his life. That's so severe that he can't hold a glass of water. He can't hold a cup and get it to his mouth because of the benign essential tremor. It's so significant. And you can watch the newsreel and you watch him trying to lift a half-full cup of water to his lips. Can't be done. He goes into this high-intensity focused ultrasound machine, no needles, no sedation, nothing, for 4 hours, comes out, walks out of the machine, takes the headset off, takes the stereotactic gear off, lifts the glass of water in front of the cameras and drinks it. TAVIs for valvular disease. New technology that's allowing us to operate on patients that are not stable enough, not sustainable enough for open cardiac surgery or other types of surgery. So new techniques are now able to bring in a whole new range of patients. So we could go on and on, maybe people in this room are innovating them, about new technologies that are disrupting the front line of clinical care. Let's talk about a couple other things that are happening. Who's heard of Patients Like Me? So Patients Like Me is a website where patients go on and share all of their clinical data, all of their clinical information, and share all of their experience and create not just a network of what's going on, but actually are dumping all of their data, what drugs they're using, what side effects they're having on there. And now researchers are actually able to use this data for large trials from around the world, using data that they've never been able to do before. Pharmaceutical companies are using it. It's actually a very compelling story that the brother of the person who created this died significant illness and died sort of, as a result, he started this website, started a community, and created a whole new landscape. HealthTap. HealthTap now has over 30,000 physicians on it. It's not been on for very long. And patients post questions, and free of charge, physicians answer them. Now, if it's a long one, it's 99 cents, and if you want a private consultation online, I think it's 10 bucks. And there are thousands and thousands of patients writing in and using HealthTap all the time. How many people have seen 23.5 hours? Yeah, maybe 5–10%. So we're used to patients coming in, we need to give them some information, we hand them a brochure on the way out, maybe refer them to a website. This is a YouTube video made by Dr. Mike Evans about the power and the need for exercise. 3.5 million views within about 4 months. CBC radio, hugely sort of a wide impact on it, and a YouTube video. Speaking of YouTube videos, I was intubating a patient the other day, last Friday I guess, And I was intubating a patient, one of the other docs came in and said, "Do you need a hand?" I said, "Yeah, it looks like it's going okay." I just kaleidoscope. And he said, "Do you mind if I use the ultrasound?" I said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So we used an ultrasound, and he sort of watched it go in, slide. I said, "That's pretty neat. I don't remember that from the CAPE course. Like, where'd you learn that?" He said, "Oh, YouTube video." Sure enough, there's a YouTube video. Place the micro, it's 3 seconds in, place the probe on the left side, walks you through the whole thing. Start looking up the procedures you do every day. Somebody said, "Oh, have you heard about this new approach for shoulder reduction?" I said, "No." Go on YouTube, watch it. There's 15 different ones that show you this one technique. Watch it time and time and time again. Nanotechnologies. How many people have heard of Coursera? 2 or 3 people. Coursera is now changing the way that education is delivered. One course on Coursera is being taken by thousands of people around the world. Coursera is now being recognized as disruptive technology that is fundamentally forcing universities, including the University of Toronto, among others, to rethink how they do it. Because the costs are low, the access is huge. And what's really interesting about this is not just that students from around the world are taking courses from the best of the best professors. You don't get to just say, "Oh, I want to offer my physiology course." You have to be one of the best professors. It started at Stanford. There's great TED Talks on Coursera. About the person who started it. You have to be the best of the best professors. You have to be able to earn your way on there. And then you can offer your courses through Coursera. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of people around the world taking courses. The really powerful part about this is not that thousands of people will take Biology 101 from some of the best biology professors there are in North America. What's really powerful is they're now able to do things like test questions. Look at peer-to-peer assessments. Look at peer-to-peer coaching. It is turning, because they have these huge numbers, they're actually able to change the way that pedagogy works and do things in the area of pedagogy and put out papers around how people learn, how people of different ages learn, how different cultures learn, how phrasing questions in different ways elicits different answers. It is turning education, medical education and other education, upside down because they're able to deliver it in a completely disruptive way. And finally, telemedicine. So telemedicine is not particularly old, or particularly new or innovative, at least as I used to think about it. But when I talk to our telemedicine network now in Ontario, like when I was a rural doctor, which I was for 10 years, I used telemedicine all the time. I bring the patients in, or I use telestroke or teleburn, teletrauma in my rural emerge or in my rural hospital. That's not telemedicine anymore. It's not alone what it does. What telemedicine is doing now is actually using it for people who live 3 kilometers away from Sunnybrook, but are 96, have been in and out of hospital repeated times, and they're not just doing a video thing, they actually have them testing their weight every day on a scale that's automatically monitored, their blood pressure, their pulse oximetry. It's all done from the comfort of their home. It's read by the nurse practitioner or the physician or somebody on the healthcare team, and it keeps the patient from having to go back and forth for diabetes, CHF, COPD. And so it's no longer being done hospital-hospital, it's being done home to clinic. It's no longer being done, and remember, I probably still have them. I know we have 23 of them in our hospital, rooms that are painted blue, because for some reason blue is the magic telemedicine color. But now it's being done, physicians have a laptop or an iPad or a tablet, and somebody at home has their own sort of devices, and it is really changing the way that care can be delivered. So that's all on the patient side. This is often one-to-one patients. So let's start thinking about systems. Let's start thinking about the types of changes and disruptive innovations on the system level. This is the Alberta Wait Times Report. You can go on, and on the left-hand side, you isolate the body part and the procedure of interest. Carpal tunnel, cataract, colorectal, whatever. There's dozens of them on there. And then you say, what hospital in the province of Alberta are you interested in? And then you go over and you say, well, it's semi-urgent or whatever. And let's take a look at the data. You hit search, and in the typical millisecond of the internet, you have a full information going back months about the performance of that particular procedure that you're interested in and how effective it is. Now, frankly, I actually spend a lot of time looking at wait times data. It's a lot of data. There's a few typos, and it's pretty technical. And it would be hard for a patient, honestly, there's a lot of data. It's not easy, but for a hospital manager, a system manager, somebody who's looking at policy and system, if you're the Department of Surgery or Department of Ophthalmology and you want to know how you're doing, it's right there, it's constantly updated. But this, I thought, was amazing. 10:44 last night. I don't leave things to the last minute. I wouldn't I've been working on this last night, but hypothetically, you can go on and take a look at what the wait times are at the hospitals, 3 hours and 12 minutes. Then you can go on the side and you can see what are your other options. Well, there's a clinic that's open for 24 more minutes. There's another access point that's already closed, another one that's closed. And this is the wait time if you go. And not only that, if you're not in front of your desktop, you can download the app. So that wherever you are, you can download the app and see if you think you need to seek care, what are the other options available in your area, and what the wait times can be expected to be. Now, obviously, between now and when you get there can be a 4-car pileup and 15 MVAs roll in, and that's going to change before you can roll into the emerge. But the reality is, you just keep checking your iPhone, or whatever I'm not endorsing Apple. Check your mobile device in question. Another interesting one from the BC website. Huge database of patient information. Huge database from the Ministry of Health patient information. And here is a source, credible, vetted, evidence-based, Canadian sort of currency and units and all that, that has a very appropriate language skills, appropriately tailored for patient language level, with some degree of cultural diversity in it, not awesome, but some, that's on the BC website. Again, a whole nother level of sort of engaging in preventative healthcare, engaging in public education, and changing the way that we think about delivering care and delivering health education. So this is a series of Twitter feeds from Sunnybrook. And again, it's the hospital I worked at, I have access to data. So here's, I'm just going to read you a little bit. Here, keeping my dad comfortable at Sunnybrook Health Sciences. Welcome. Let us know if there's anything we can do while you're here and your dad are here. We were just right back. A couple minutes later. They do at 12:23. We're a few minutes behind that. Thank you. Actually, could you tell me how to get a parking pass and if I can do it online? Sure. Here's the website, or call them. No problem. Thank you. This is not a great advert for Canadian Healthcare Service. ER waiting at Sunnybrook. That's at 8:51, 7:50 by 8:51, so 20 minutes later. We hear you. Waiting is never easy. Please send us a DM, a direct message, if you'd like to chat more. Wow, thanks. Impressed you took the time to respond. Medical care has been excellent. All we need is a bed in the ward. Had first terrible experience with the doctor at Sunnybrook. Refused to allow him to treat my dad. So this is somebody tweeting this out. This person may not be Ashton Kutcher with millions of people, but let me tell you, this may be somebody with thousands of followers, or posting this on YouTube to thousands of people and friends that they have who are being tweeted and retweeted, liked and reliked, and going up on huge websites. Think about the damage impact to our hospital. Think about the way that can spread in minutes. So, 7:57 a.m., a couple hours later, we hear your frustration. Would you consider sharing your thoughts? Give them a link. Your feedback helps us grow. And we sent somebody from our office at the patient experience down to meet them immediately. Feet on the ground. Department of Patient Experience is just fabulous. I'm so impressed I'm going to volunteer. That's wonderful. Glad to hear. Glad they could help. Glad that you'll be helping too. This is changing the way that we think about care delivery. None of these people are physicians. None of these people are nurses. None of these people have clinical training at all. They're well trained for tone. They're well trained for content. We have a high psychiatry youth, so they're well trained to deal with the suicidal patients who started to engage with us. And we have a protocol in place because we had a number of people who started engaging and then started taking high-risk self-harm activity. But none of them are clinicians. But this is fundamentally changing the way we think about interacting with patients and patient experience. It used to be they'd come in, they'd go, they'd see a clinician, and they'd walk out. Now we have a whole part of the hospital that's engaging in the delivery of the healthcare experience. Ontario did 22 sort of high-impact procedures, looking at different things like bariatric surgery, made some formal recommendations, and then a few years later we're wondering if anybody was paying any attention. So now you can go to go to the website and check on all of these things and look at the variation across the province. Because one thing we know from the Dartmouth Atlas, published years ago, and now replicated in terms of small area geography variability studies across Canada, and we do a lot of it on Ontario, variation kills. Best practice, high recommendations, clear best standards of what should be done by physicians, for physicians. And yet what we see here in all these different colors, including really closely, densely populated areas with close geographic proximity in Lower Toronto, 2 or 3 colors. So huge standards of deviation difference in procedures. Here's the same thing for vitamin D testing, right? Huge variation. And so what you're seeing here, and what you're able to start to see, is how disruptive innovations, or things that could be disruptive, or the potential for disruptive, and to change the way we start thinking about healthcare. But Christensen didn't just talk about technology. He said there's two things that happen with a disruptive innovation. You change the market dynamic, and you change the value network. So what's a value network? He said these are the two things that make something truly disruptive. You change the market share, you change the value network. So there's nodes in every network. Nodes are the people or the technology. And connecting those people and those technologies are relationships, communication, dialogue. It's the interaction between the people and between the resources in the network. And this is a very traditional, hierarchical, traditional organizational network. You've got a CEO, a bunch of people underneath it. It doesn't have to be a CEO. If somebody in charge, a bunch of people who report up, the lines of communication are very clear. You know, the head of one department might talk to the head of another department. You know, one admin support might talk to a parallel admin support on the other side. Very traditional, clear value networks, clearly aligned. There's tons and tons of literature now looking at what is happening to value networks in a new system. This is a value network map. It doesn't matter for what organization, for what clinical condition. But people are now mapping what the value networks are. Who are the power brokers? So when you start to put a quality person from an agency into your hospital and embed them there, you suddenly have a new relationship and a new structure. When you have a central cancer agency with regional models, and those regional models have cross-pollination into your hospital structure, or when our home care puts 4 or 5 people with offices and physical feet on the ground within our general internal medicine wards, you suddenly have a whole bunch of very different nodes and a whole different set of value connections and responsibility. Now it's no longer a matter of calling one CEO to another CEO, because as these systems change and these innovations, these disruptive innovations spread out, what they're actually fundamentally doing is changing the value networks in our healthcare system. And this really is where the power of the value innovation starts to really be felt, or the power of this disruptive innovation starts to be felt. So what happens when you have disruption after disruption after disruption? I could go on for 3 days, and you could go on for 10 days thinking about the type of disruptive innovations that you're seeing in the healthcare system. They just pile onto each other, driven by new technology, new approaches. What happens when you have all of this happening at once? Across a local system, across a regional system, you get transformation. You get that dirty jargon word called transformation. So why do I say that? What's the definition of transformation? A marked change in form, nature, or appearance. And what you're actually seeing these days is a fundamental change in the form of the healthcare delivery system. Why? Because you have disruptive innovation that's making that possible. So what does it look like? Here in Saskatchewan, this is what transformation looks like. This is what's being set up. Better care, better value, better teams. If you couldn't map, if you couldn't do those types of maps I showed you that showed you area by area variation, you can't measure better value. If you can't communicate and have those new value networks driven by new technology, you can't create better teams. If you can't map, if you can't have those types of interactions with patients in new ways and tweet back and forth and start to engage with patients in new ways, you can't deliver better care in the same way. If you can't have patients go on and see in a moment's heartbeat what the wait time is in Emerge, and then know what their other choices are, you can't drive better care in the same way. But because all of these if you can't start caring for patients with benign essential tremor through things that we didn't hear about 3 or 4 years ago, and care for them in ways that will fundamentally change their life, it's hard to deliver better care. But because of all of these disruptive innovations, you're able to start to layer on transformation. You're able to begin to talk about a culture of safety, patient and family-centered care. When a government can go and put on the type of information that BC has, so that patients can go on and get literate, appropriate, unbiased, Canadian-based information, you can have patient and family-centered care. This is Ontario's map. I just wanted to show you, everybody seems to like triangles. That was the purpose of these slides. And that everybody has a picture. And you can go across the governments, and you can go actually to the UK, and you can go to Australia, you can even go to Africa. I was in Qatar last Tuesday doing some work for them. They've got something that looks awfully similar. So what is all of these things? What is this transformation trying to drive at? If you sort of were trying to reduce all of the triangles and the circles and all of the stuff, it's all about the classic triangle. How do you do things better, faster, and cheaper? Right? The classic MBA impossible triad. But that's what it's about. When you go back to all of these slides, it's how do you do things better, for better value, and a more timely way. And how are they doing it? It's all about accountability. And it comes in different ways, it comes in different forms. You can talk about accountability, you can talk about transparency, you talk about the wait times. The reason people are putting measurement up, the reason people are posting variation about vitamin D testing, it's about driving accountability. That's what this ability to share that type of data is a way of driving quality, efficiency, and sustainability, but it's also a way of really thinking about how do you help drive accountability. And I can tell you, when I was in government, and I had a small portfolio, but it was a few $1 billion, the constant question was, how are you going to drive accountability for the innovations you're running? Whether it's nurse practitioner-led clinics, a 70% increase in medical school spots, opening 3 new campuses, opening the new Northern Ontario School of Medicine, where is the accountability going to be coming from for the types of things that we were running out, and how do we get there? So this has perhaps been interesting, perhaps not, but ultimately this is supposed to be a talk about leadership. So where's the leadership in this talk? Leadership is the key to meeting the bottom line. There hasn't ever been a study produced about successful execution. It doesn't ultimately track its success or failure back down to the concept of leadership. Harvard Business Review, Good to Great, all of these things, when they go out and you take a look, think of your own examples. Think about wait time strategies that work or don't work. Think about in your departments. Maybe you're an anesthetist and somebody wanted to do something new with medication safety. When you think about the things that have worked or not worked, the key to that success, the key to the bottom line of quality, efficiency, fiscal sustainability is about leadership. And that is consistently the key to driving success in all, whatever the triangles are, whatever the circles are. And the literature is consistently clear on the importance of it. But there's many types of leadership. There's books and books and books. There's transactional leadership, there's strategic leadership, there's operational leadership, there's leading from behind, there's leading from the side, right? There's books and books and books on it. So I want to talk about a leadership that I think is relevant to healthcare right now. And it was created by these two people. Burns, who is the person on the left, and Burns wrote, his study was on presidential leadership, and he wrote a number of biographies of different presidents, and he came up with a theory of transformational leadership. And the guy on the right, beside him, Barr, took that a few years later and took the concept a bit farther, did a bunch of research. He was sort of a psychologist researcher, and he wrote a book called Transformational Leadership. And so if we think that because of all this disruptive innovation, we're transforming the system, and if the system is transforming itself, then the type of leadership we need is going to be transformational leadership. That's the theory I'm suggesting today. So let's talk about what is transformational leadership. So Burns talks a little about it. It's changed through example. It's hands-on. It's tactile. It talks a lot about it having a clear vision, a clear mission, a clear identity, and a clear identity goal. The goal is around the team. It's about organization and community. And Bass does a lot of work that takes it a lot farther. How many people have heard of Stephen Covey? Right, so Stephen Covey is very derivative off the work of Bass, and I'll actually show you that in a couple slides. So Bass goes on and talks about, you know what, the leader has, and he's got some fancy names for it, but ultimately, not fancy, but he gets a lot of appropriate jargon. That's how you get published. Charisma, focus on the individual, intellectual stimulation. And it inspires when they do the research and they sort of say, what is this person doing for their employees, for the people who report to them, who work for them, their colleagues. They don't even have to be reporting, but they're the people in their environment. They inspire trust, admiration, loyalty, and respect. That's transformational leadership. Let's look at it again in another way. Does this read it all at the back? I was nervous it would. Is this somewhat legible at the back? Thank you. So, inspirational motivation, that's that charisma. Intellectual stimulation, and when you think about it, it's creating curiosity. Individualized consideration, it's about focusing on the individual and recognizing each person on that team, whatever their role as an individual. Medical Post, I don't know how many people, nobody will admit to it publicly, but we read it. There was one called Inefficiency in the OR, and it talked about a surgeon at Sunnybrook. Again, it's what I know, it's my backyard, it's not better, it's just what I happen to know. There's examples in every place that you work, and they talk about how this surgeon, Shaddy, spends all his time between cases going around and pumping up the cleaning crew, and at the beginning of the day holding a team huddle, not just with the OR scrub nurses, but with the people, the porters who are going to be bringing the patients in. He brings in the people who are going to be cleaning the rooms between cases. He brings in the people who will be bringing the equipment up and turning them, and they do a big group huddle, and he pumps them up. He talks about each of their roles that day, what the patient's going to be bringing in, what they're going to have to do, and he gets each of those people in the room, big huddle, and he checks in on them during the day. He's never in the doctor's lounge or the surgeon's lounge between patients. He's in the OR, talking to the people, out in the hallways, talking to the porters, keeping things moving. An idealized influence and impact. Task, intuit the direction, and he talks about outcome. Highly motivational changes in the followers, and I talked about that loyalty, that respect, that admiration. Intuitional organizational change. This will be too small to read. This is from a book called The Portrait of a Transformational Leader, Legacy of Martin Luther King. This is Covey's, I'm not going to go into it, but Stephen Covey ends up building a lot of his work and talk on this idea of transformational leadership. He compares it to transactional leadership, which was he sort of talked a lot about, and talks about, he uses a lot of gender-biased language, I apologize for that, built on this idea of meaning, purpose, values. Again, it's about vision, mission, etc. And this is a final one talking about transformative leadership out of Columbia a few years ago now. Again, it's about that vision and commitment. They talk a lot about equity, equality, empowerment, sustainability, shared power. They talk about participatory, egalitarian, responsive, transparent, accountable. And I like this because when I read this and I put a minister's speech against it, the words were very similar. Engagement, transparency, accountability. I kept thinking this is sort of interesting. Like this is, I don't think it's conscious, but when you take a look at what's being discussed and what's being talked about in healthcare, sustainability. I mean, we can't read anything in healthcare these days without hearing about sustainability. Shared power between primary care and hospitals. Shared power between the community and regional health authorities. Shared power between different healthcare providers. Shared power within professions, among NPs and RNs and RPNs. Transparent, accountable. So there's two pieces of advice that I went around before I applied for the ministry, and I said, how would I be a good citizen? They're going to say, Tepper, you're a rural family doctor. What do you know about being a civil servant? Like, what does it mean to be a civil servant? So I went and I asked a bunch when I was preparing for my interview. And they gave me, I said, what does it mean to be a good civil servant? They gave me two answers. One was fearless advice, unwavering loyalty. That was their definition. It was pretty good. And the other one was speak truth to power. And when you sit in the ministry, the one group that you feel out in the healthcare system that has power is the medical association. I don't know how long the minister was here today, but I don't know how many other groups the minister would come out, spend that much time with their board the night before, and then come out and sit down and have that much of an engagement. And maybe your minister is different from all the other ministers I've worked for and had a chance to meet, but I can tell you there was 1 or 2 meetings a year that the minister does not miss, and that is the meeting with the medical association. Martin, where is Martin? How many times has the health minister missed the CMA annual meeting?
Many.
No, at the national CMA meeting. Not too many. Over the last 30 years? More recently. But if you look over 30 years, and that is a very political statement on behalf of this government, but if you look over 30 years, there's a very consistent pattern, more than I would say most others, most other groups. There's one group, so on this one, I'm very conscious that when I go into this next and final slide, I think second to final slide, I think I say thank you on the next slide. This is sort of speaking a bit of truth to power. So, leadership in physicians. Number one, I think we do leadership for disruptive innovation unbelievably well. I think we know how to lead disruptive innovation really, really well. We know how to take new medication, new technology, we know how to design RCTs, we know how to go from bench to commercialization. Not all of us, but within our profession. We do disruptive well, and we lead it well. And we've got good skills to lead it. And some of us do it more than others, but I think it is actually something that we see physicians doing. We have physician champions in our hospital, and in my clinic, my primary care clinic, in my homeless shelters that I work at. I do a lot of homeless work. Where we have physicians who roll out EMRs, who roll out innovative things. What I'm not sure we do as well is engage in transformational leadership. I don't think we do it as well for a number of reasons. You know, Dennis Kendall is here, and I actually think he has produced some of the most thoughtful pieces on physician leadership in Canada that I've had a chance to read recently. I think he's very provocative. He talks about sort of an adaptive capacity deficit, I think. Dennis, am I getting that roughly right? Am I quoting you somewhat right? Yeah, adaptive capacity deficit. I think when it comes to transformational leadership, we don't do it as well as we could. I think this is our opportunity for growth. But I also think we're hindered. We're hindered because people have perceptions of us. And it is sometimes hard to get out of that perceptions that others have. I think people don't fully understand physicians well. People come to me, perhaps inappropriately, but I spend a modest amount of time every week talking when I was in ministry or now as a VP. People say, like, how do you, like, what is it about doctors? I always say it's not hard. We want to be engaged. We want to be engaged early. We want transparency. And we want fairness. I'm not saying that's all we want, but at the core, involve us early, involve us throughout, be transparent, and be fair. Yeah, I get that, but how do we really do it? No, actually, that's what you have to do. And they say, we've done it. I say, really? Have you done it? And I must say, like, it resonated to me today a little bit. I hope the deputy's not at the back or anything. But like, it resonated to me. You know, the minister said, we're doing this. And several people stood up and said, I hear you're doing some of it, but let me give you 2 or 3 examples where it hasn't happened. And it's simple and it's important and it doesn't happen as much as it should. There's also, you know, when you talk a lot about these ideas of transformational leadership, equity, partnership, shared power, there are a lot of things in the healthcare system and in society at large that put physicians in a different structure. Bylaws, public hospital acts. They create structures around physicians that are not, even when we want to be transformational in our leadership, role models on TV, societal expectations, historical perceptions of physicians that create people's perceptions about us as a profession and a perception of us as leaders that is not necessarily fair, but hinders us from playing some of this transformational role. And sometimes we even hinder ourselves in how we step up to these transformational roles. And the third of 14 points, no, I'm kidding, there's only 3, is just that there's a huge need for physician leadership. This system cannot evolve in any positive way. And this was, you know, when I said, does the system to change need physician participation, it was like 100%, except for the person still eating the brownie, which I noticed only because I was jealous that I didn't get one. Actually, it was the 9 Nanaimo bars. So there is a massive, massive need for physician participation, for physician engagement. The system, it is amazing. We used to say that we could, I was involved, not as the lead, but in several physician negotiations of different sizes, some large collective agreements, some smaller when I was in the ministry. And we always used to say that we could spend 1.5 years negotiating a collective agreement. But the action of one physician in one hospital could quickly undo all the goodwill and good intent of the letters on the page. Such is the power and position and influence of physicians. We as physicians, can spend a year collecting evidence-based guidelines around hip replacement, around cataracts, around what drugs to use, about when to use these drugs, and we can publish them ourselves to our peers. And it just takes one physician in one senior leadership position in a large hospital to say, that's nice. I'm doing it the way I've been doing it for 20 years. And you laugh. But I remember it was not that long ago, and it doesn't matter exactly the specifics, it was related to orthopedics, and a big guideline came out. I think this, it had, I forget which association, but major national, they put it up, and there's a quote in the middle of the paper from a senior physician leader who said, I don't, like literally, I don't care, I am going to continue to do it the way I've been doing it. And that is hard, and sometimes, somebody's going to say, well, my patients are different. I get all that. We can go through that dialogue about how each of our patients are unique. I get that. But the point is, the system cannot change without physicians, because physicians are the most influential player in the healthcare system. And on some level, they know it. And that's why they come to meetings, and that's why they talk about engagement. But they don't always get it right, and we don't always get it right. And when we're practicing as leaders, we're not always practicing transformational leaders. But because we went in for this, because we want to make patient care better, and we want to make it better not just one-on-one, but in the health systems we're working on, we have to find a way to help them understand us. And when that door is open, we have to be ready to step up. Not in any other type of leadership form, but in a transformational leadership form. Because the system is being disrupted in ways that we could never imagine, and not just in 1 or 2 or 3 ways, but in dozens of ways. And that disruption is leading to fundamental transformation, and that transformation can only happen through transformational leadership. And we're not the only ones, by any means, who need to play transformational leadership, but we have to be at the table. We have to be at the table as transformational leaders, and we have to be ready, willing, and able to play that role, because that's why and how we will help our patients. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Well, Claire Kozrowski is coming up and going to thank you. I'm going to actually ask the panel members to come on up, because we're going to jump right into the panel. So Dr. Jim Cross, Dr. Brian Sharstein, Dr. Kishore Viswanathan, come on up and join Dr. Joshua Tepper up here on the podium, because we're going to jump right into the panel right after the thank you. Go ahead, Claire.
Thank you, Dr. Joshua Tepper. He has spoken indeed to everything we need to hear at this point in time. Certainly that talk was inspirational, but I think it opened a lot of eyes to where we are not going yet, and how we can certainly accelerate the pace of how we do our transformation here, and how physicians are indeed at the core of what needs to happen. Thank you.